361 South 300 East in San Utah. And the first item on our agenda is Strategic Plan Focus Group Report, High Quality Learning. And Dr. Amber Roderick Landward, Director of ISD, will be presenting this to us.
Yes, very excited to share with you the work that's been done this year. Just to remind folks, the committee members who are in this fantastic committee are board members, President Schill, Vice President Amanda Oakes, and then Holly Neibauer are the board members. And then for the administrators who are serving on the committee, we have all of the school performance directors and then myself, as well as Assistant Superintendent Dr. Robinson and Superintendent Dr. Rick Robbins. It's been an absolute pleasure to be facilitating this committee this year. As you may recall, Dr. Dowdle had facilitated it in previous years, so I was excited to have the opportunity to work with this group a little bit more intimately as the facilitator of the committee. We met 7 times this year between August and May. And if you recall, we updated the entire board about our work in both September and in January. So what we talked about as a committee, me doing tonight, is really giving following in access and opportunities great pathway and giving a little bit more of a summary of all of the work that's been done. As you know, high quality learning is the biggest section of the strategic plan. We have 4 specific impact statements in that particular section. And across those 4 impact statements, there are 6 different strategic initiatives and 16 success criteria. So there's a lot of meat in that particular section of the plan. And as you read that part of the plan, a lot of those impact statements, strategic initiatives, and success criteria work together and overlap. And so what I try to organize in a way that hopefully is readable to both the entire board, but also to our public at large, so that they understand what we are working on specifically, is taking each of those impact statements, the strategic initiatives and success criteria, breaking it into those 4 areas, and then really looking at the work that has been ongoing. So by ongoing, I'm looking at and identifying things that are already established or have been initiated prior to this school year. So some of those are long-term practices. And I distinctly recall when we were developing the strategic plan, Nancy, I think it was you who said, with this section, but really all the sections, we're building on so much of the great work that our district has already been doing. And so not everything in the strategic plan is brand new, but continuing to accent the great work that's already been done. So a lot of that is represented in ongoing. Again, it's not exhaustive. Then in the progress column, that really highlights a lot of the work that we've been doing in this particular school year. So the progress are going to be things that the committee has worked on and other areas outside of the committee work in terms of what the departments have been doing to move the strategic plan forward in those areas. And then the final column notes the work that we will be targeting next year in the committee to follow up the work that was initiated this year or the discussions that we began during this year's committee work. So that work is all captured in this document that you have in board documents. And as I said, it's not necessarily exhaustive, but certainly captures the bulk of the work. So then what I'd like to do for my presentation tonight, because you have more of that information, is just review some of the highlights in each of those 4 areas with some of the measurable outcomes and data that represent the work with those specific initiatives. So the first impact statement is that Canyon School District graduates demonstrate mastery, autonomy, and purpose as set forth in the Utah Portrait of a Graduate. If you recall, last year you as a board adopted the Canyon's Portrait of a Scholar. So the committee work this year in looking at Portrait of a Scholar, we did some specific work in terms of moving that purpose forward. But there are also some pieces that really highlight the work that will continue to grow and help us as we further finalize the competencies of that Portrait of a Canyon Scholar. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of initiatives that are happening across the district. One, Information Investigators is a big initiative. We are in its 2nd year. We wrote several grants and were awarded over $300,000 between a grant that we wrote with or from USBE, as well as a national grant from the News Literacy organization. And with that money, we've been able to work with about 240 educators to date And those educators have participated in a year-long monthly professional learning series where they really dug into the critical thinking that it takes to be good consumers of information, to be able to utilize and organize sources, understanding misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, as well as integrate those concepts into their class to teach their students. A big part of our Portrait of a Canyon Scholar is critical thinking, and the definition that we chose for that competency is really looking at being good consumers of information and being able to apply that. So I really wanted to highlight that work that's going to really help the foundation as we continue to build those competencies in our teachers before we start really beefing them up in our students. Also wanted to give you an update on, as we talk about, building information and supporting our Portrait of a Canyon Scholar, our libraries become a critical aspect of that and our students' ability to consume information and to really investigate things on their own. We spent a lot of money over the last couple of years updating our elementaries in particular, and I just wanted to celebrate the work this year that we have in the last year. Well, 2 years, I guess I should say. We did over 110,000 books in our elementary schools. Because if you recall, 2 years ago, when Gretchen presented data about how our elementaries are doing in terms of their library status, we had 0 of our schools that were proficient, their library collection was proficient or exemplar in terms of library standards. We also, at that time, the average age of our collection was 19 years old, hence the need to read more than 100,000 books. But we are happy to report that this year, by the end of the year, 22 of our 28 elementary schools are now in the proficient or exemplary category for their collection. And as a whole, our elementary school libraries, we average that our collections are now less than 10 years old. So that is a huge celebration. With the funding that the board allocated from ESSERS, we were able to purchase nearly 50,000 new books for our elementary libraries that definitely helped get us to this point. So very exciting, and again, contributes to that Portrait of a Canyon Scholar. And then finally, I just wanted to share a highlight with the work that we've been doing related to AI. I know this has been a discussion with you all as a board and many of your constituents. I think it fits really nicely into the discussion that our committee has had related to Portrait of a Canyon Scholar and developing those competencies. We have really tried to be leaders in the state when it comes to AI. So Emma Moss, one of the ISD specialists, even reached out to other districts across the Wasatch Front and then ended up reaching out to the entire state and started a statewide collaborative so that we could work together as districts to just keep each other in the loop of what we're learning, what we're doing, how we're implementing, what tools our teachers are using, what hiccups we're finding. That also led us to developing and presenting to that collaborative the Canyon's view of AI, which we've outlined just basic information for our patrons, teachers, and students about what AI is, how it can be used, and some resources. It's also been integrated into our digital citizenship lessons this year. And then we've really beefed up our professional learning in the area of AI. We had 72 teachers participate in a PD series, and also wanted to just give a shout out. Today was the second and final day of our Digital Teaching and Learning Summit. Our keynote speaker, John Spencer, is a university professor who came and spoke with 700 of our teachers who registered yesterday. They didn't register yesterday. We were there yesterday. They registered several months ago and kicked off the conference with a really great keynote presentation on the power of AI, but also the empowering of being a human teacher and how those two things together can really build an exciting classroom for the future. So we definitely have a beat on it. We had more than 10% of our sessions over the last 2 days for the DTL conference centered around AI, and they were very well attended. Our teachers are very interested. So that's something that, again, an innovation that I think speaks to that particular part of the strategic plan. Any questions about that particular section?
Mrs. Teague?
Just a quick question on that. You said that Canyon's view of AI, where you said it's for patrons and parents. Where can we find that?
It is in our Tech for Families. And so that is in the Parent Connections. When you click on Families, right there at the top, it says Parent Connections or Tech for Families, and it's listed right there. I can link that in if that would be helpful, Nancy.
Great, and then Mrs. Miller.
Where did you say Mr. Spencer was from? And is his presentation online?
Ooh, I don't believe he has shared that with us yet, and we were not able to videotape that. But I will find out if I can. I definitely have resources that he has developed, and I can send you some of the book titles that he.
So interesting.
It was really great. He also had a joke that I think Leon would appreciate. He started off when he was introducing himself, and he had a little picture that had iced tea, ice cube, and vanilla ice, right? And he said, I just want to introduce myself and let you know I'm from the Ice Age, where we used to stop, collaborate, and listen.
That's cool.
I mean, like, I was
Look at that.
and I love it. That's cool.
Unbelievable, yeah.
So he fit right in with Canyons with his great jokes. So, any other questions about that particular section of high quality learning before I move on? I'm gonna just try and take a quick check to see if there's anything else. And board member,
Wait, 10 minutes.
oh, okay.
We're supposed to,
10 minutes for the biggest section of the strategic plan? All right, well, you know I'm a fast talker, challenge accepted. I can do this. The next section really focuses on competency-based personalized learning experiences. And this is an area that our committee has spent a lot of time talking about over the course of this year. So again, this just is some of the measurable information, but I really encourage you, if you haven't had a chance, to look at the summary report where we have really spent a lot of time working. This is where we highlight a lot of our STEM, our arts integration. We have spent a lot of time digging into what we can learn with micro schools. But some of the things I wanted to highlight were areas where we had very specific data. This chart right here just shows you some of the extended learning opportunities that we have at the district level. So these represent district-based competitions that follow up what is happening in a lot of our schools. And we've just grown so significantly in so many of these events and have gotten them back online since COVID that I thought it was really exciting to highlight. Some of the ones that have just grown exponentially, particularly in the last decade. I mean, debate, we're so big now, we almost can't grow anymore. We don't have the number of students. Yes, thanks, Rick. So these are the number of students that have participated. Film festival is K-12, that's 650 plus students. I think there were 250 entries. The math leads represents elementary, math counts, middle school, and math competition is the high school. That's the series, and we had 125 students in that. And then I also included in here, because it continues to grow, that we had 273 students earn the seal of biliteracy this year. And a fair number of those were actually not even dual immersion students. So really exciting to see our heritage speakers earning that seal of biliteracy as well. In my update, I believe in January, I gave you some updates about the STEAM grant that we had received last year and what that went to. I wanted to just cap that off with final numbers. We ended up having more than 20 of our elementary schools offer STEAM nights, and depending on the school, we had anywhere from 150 to 1,000 people attend. We also were asked to present at the Safe Kids Fair, and we had some of the highest participation and most people attending our booth than many of the others. So that was exciting to be a part of and to highlight the great work that we're doing in Canyons. We ended up having over 200 elementary students participate in our STEAM Squad coding club that was happening either before or after school. And then our makerspace that we put in our middle schools this year, and then a handful of our elementary schools. You can see there the number of students that participated. We were able to write another grant this year, and we were awarded $1 million so that we can expand these efforts over the next couple of years. So we'll be able to offer our makerspace in even more elementary schools. continue to support the STEAM nights with more kits. And then we also were able to buy more specific curriculum and equipment to be able to ramp up our brain boosters to support the Brain Booster 2.0, but also some specific integrations into STEM at the elementary and middle school level. So exciting to see those things move forward. I'm trying to cruise here, Amber. The third area in the high quality learning part of the strategic plan highlights that we will provide clear standards for the development of principle-based character traits, which are integrated into student life and learning experiences. And this really meshes nicely with our Portrait of a Canyon Scholar initiatives. And so there's a lot of overlap there, but of course, Thrive Time was a big focus of our whole district this year that really hits at these particular initiatives and success criteria. But I also wanted to highlight just because this particular part of the strategic plan mentions explicitly elective courses, I wanted to just highlight our district course catalog and what we have in terms of advanced opportunities for students at the high school level. Across the district, we are offering 85 concurrent enrollment courses. That doesn't mean that every single school has 85, but that we have 85 across the 5 high schools and CTE, and then similarly 36 AP courses. So we offer quite a number of opportunities for our students.
Not to remember Leadership Academy, so at the high school level supports this. So
Perfect. Yes, thank you. And then finally, our last focus area in high quality learning is that all educators have access to job embedded and personalized professional learning. And this year we launched Canyons U, which is a personalized learning framework for our educators that really targets learning that's tailored to their needs, either in micro-credentials, in targeted learning experiences that they can attend specific face-to-face workshops, or in what we call a knowledge base, which is essentially a learning library for them to be able to access how-tos and ongoing information. Canyons U had over 4,000 hits, and this was kind of a soft launch, so we were pretty pleased with that. Over the course of the 22-23 school year, we offered 560 targeted learning opportunities across all of our departments. I only focused on professional learning for our teachers. So this represents what was offered to our classroom teachers, whether they were general ed or special ed. We had 100% of our teachers participate in professional learning outside of their school. So they attended a district professional learning opportunity, one of those 560. And then to follow up that support, because professional learning only goes so far if you don't have the coaching and ongoing support back at the building. ISD specialists alone were visiting our schools 2,342 times over the course of this year. And those visits included anything from individual teacher coaching to team coaching to working with the coaches and principals on specific initiatives or with specific teachers and everything in between. And then finally, just to highlight a big support that I think you're all aware of and is written in a number of our policies. Just wanted you to see the actual numbers and the level of which it's getting used. We publish annually about 64 instructional guides, and those 64 instructional guides, they're for every content area. I shouldn't say every content area, not every elective has an instructional guide, but several do. Those 64 guides were accessed over 1.7 million times over the course of this year. And so again, it just shows that that becomes a resource when we're talking about job embedded professional learning that's personalized. They also have access to resources to be able to support their own inquiries and continuing to develop their skills as they support their students. So in a nutshell, that was the highlight of high quality learning. Did I hit the 10 minutes? Do we have time for questions?
Super fast. Thank you. Mrs. Pedersen.
I just wanted to thank you because I've been really interested in the AI, to have you present on that and to know, because I'm not on that committee, to know all of the things that you're heading into in that particular area. So thank you so much. I'm really excited because we do touch everything, but it's nice to have that report. So thank you for your hard work.
Mrs. T.
Yeah, thank you. This is really great. It's exciting. And as I read through the list for the targeted work for this next school year, you guys are gonna be busy. You're always busy. But, you know, and one of the things that I hope to start seeing it come together are the competencies for the Portrait of Canyon Scholar. And I know we've talked about this before, but I'm hoping that you're looking at it from a K-12 lens.
We are. Amber, you should share. They've already actually done a lot of work, but it's just not ready for the board yet. They're still working on it. But
That's,
Cheryl,
we don't need to
we
take
have-
time, but I'm glad to hear that.
We do have a first draft that breaks down each of those 5 competencies of the Portrait of a Canyon Scholar and the specific skills developmentally K-12 and what that is going to look like. We just have to clean it up a little bit.
yeah, it's really impressive. It really is. Like they've done a lot of.
It only took about 15 minutes.
You guys are superheroes.
We did it at one board meeting back here.
Okay, any other questions?
Committee members, anything else that
Anything you want to add?
that you'd like to add?
Okay, wow, thank you. That, you really cruised through that. Okay, thank you so much. We will, actually, we need to move item B, Amber, just to business meeting.
That's great. That sounds great.
So we'll move that down. Item B in study, the Thrive Time proposal will be item A in study. Sorry, in new business. So. We can do that. We're out of time. Okay, so thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Last time they asked, there wasn't. I would like to welcome everyone to the business meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is June 4th, 2024, and we're meeting at the district office located at 9361 South, 300 East in Sandy, Utah. The first item is to approve tonight's agenda. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight, June 4th, 2024, with one change, and that is that we move the study session item 2B to the beginning of new business to item A, and then legislative policy update will be item B, and the budget update will be item C.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Oaks. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll be led by Kirsten Stewart, Associate Director of Communications.
Please rise and join me in a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the Canyon Strong Employee Recognitions, and Jeff Haney, Director, and Kirsten Stewart, Associate Director of Communications, will present.
Thank you, President Schill, for this time to wrap up the school year with the Canyon Strong recognitions for employees and also for students, for teachers, for education support professionals, and definitely parents and volunteers. Now, what a year it has been. And it's so hard for us to believe that 9 months has passed since we rolled out the red carpet for the first day of school for our students for this school year. And this definitely has been a school year for the history books. Now, of course, it seems like just yesterday, but we also know that many life-changing moments have happened during this school year. One of those was Saturday night, obviously for many of our teachers of the year. They were honored and recognized during Canyon's District Night with Real Salt Lake. Per our tradition, Salt Lake, Real, invites all of our teachers of the year onto the field at halftime to be recognized by the hometown crowd. We are so excited that we were able to continue that tradition this year and have our teachers of the year on the field. Real Salt Lake provided 2 free tickets to all of our teachers of the year and discounted tickets for the entire community so they could come and cheer for their teachers as they stepped forward and received those cheers. I was down on the field at the time, and the cheers, man, it was deafening down there for our teachers. They got those applause, as did Real Salt Lake. They won 5-1 in an amazing game. It was a fantastic night, and it was a great night under the stars with our educational stars. Now, our school year was capped by, Derek, this isn't working. There we go. What? Let's try this. And nope. There we go. It worked. Yep. Nope. Are you going to do that for me, Derek? Okay, I'll just point to you when we're going to move. Now, this school year was capped by 2 more team state championships for Canyon's high schools. The first we'll mention tonight is the 4th in a row for the Corner Canyon Chargers. Now, the Davis Darts pushed the Chargers into double overtime in the final. A golden goal ended that stalemate and gave Corner Canyon the big win for the fourth year in a row. Now, this victory extended Corner Canyon's win streak in the postseason to always. They've never lost in the postseason. Now, the Corner Canyon boys lacrosse teams obviously adds to our overall total for the year, but for Corner Canyon High School, they have brought home 5 state team championships in one school year. And that would be football, boys golf, cheer, boys track and field, and now boys lacrosse. So congratulations and way to go, Corner Canyon Chargers. Derek? Now the next honorees are the Brighton High Bengals, the 5A state champions in boys lacrosse. The Bengals capped an unforgettable season with this record-making finish in the 5A finals. They won 10-3 over Park City, and this marked Brighton High's first state championship in boys lacrosse. So congratulations to the Bengals for making it into the history books for being the first team to bring home that state trophy in boys lacrosse. So Brighton's win pushed us to 8 team state championships in one year. And individually, our student athletes won 25 individual state championships throughout the year. That is an amazing total for our student athletes and our student artists, because there are activities by the Utah High School Activities Association that are sanctioned. So congratulations to all of our students for participating in those High School Activity Association events and bringing home those state trophies for their school and for Canyon School District. But you know, the awards keep coming, Derek. In the arts, bands at Canyon's high schools hit the perfect beat at the State Band Festival. 4 Canyon's bands from Alta, Brighton, Corner Canyon, and Hillcrest qualified at region to go to state. That was held in May at Skyridge High. At state, 3 of our bands scored the highest possible. That's a superior rating. And those bands are from Alta High School, the Alta Wind Symphony. Caleb Shavasteri is the director. Brighton Symphonic Band, Michaela Mortensen, the director, and the Corner Canyon Wind Symphony, Dr. Randall Clark, the director. Congratulations to the Superior Hawks, Bengals, and Chargers student musicians. Derek? The next honorees are the choirs that are in top scores of the State Choir Festival. The State Choir Festival was held at Libby Gardner Hall at the University of Utah. Canyon's district was represented by choirs from Alta, Brighton, Corner Canyon, and Jordan High Schools. Again, they had to qualify at region in order to compete at the state contest. They wowed the trio of judges and all earned the highest rankings possible. Choirs from Alta, Brighton, Corner Canyon, and Jordan scored superior in this highly competitive adjudicated event. Alta's choir is led by April Ayund. Brighton's is led by Daniel Enrazian. Corner Canyon's is led by Melissa Thorne, and Jordan's is led by Jared Putnam. So congratulations to our choirs for earning the highest possible rankings at their festival. Also, Jordan, Hillcrest, and Corner Canyon all qualified at region events to bring their chamber choirs, which are top auditioned choirs, no larger than 32 students, to state, solo, and ensemble. All 3 of the ensembles received perfect scores, with both adjudicators who were scoring them giving a superior rating. So congratulations to all of our choirs who qualified to compete and earned the superior rankings at the festivals. Derek? Our next honorees are the orchestras and student musicians who have won honors in recent weeks. Orchestras from all 5 Canyons high schools qualified at region to compete at the State Orchestra Festival. Corner Canyon student musicians were among just 9 orchestras to score in the top rankings in the state contest. So congratulations to them. Also worthy of recognitions are the 3 Canyons District students who were chosen for a side-by-side performance with members of the Utah Symphony. This unique experience gives students valuable mentorship from world-class musicians, as well as the opportunity to perform on the stage at a Bravo Hall. McKay Nyman, who just graduated from Corner Canyon High, won the audition for Principal Horn, the Utah Symphony, in this side-by-side event. Brighton's Noah Ripplinger won this oboe audition, and Bengal violinist William Buckley also took part in the side-by-side event with the professional musicians from the Utah Symphony. So congratulations to the orchestra students who won at festivals and also the side-by-side events. Derek? The next honorees are our 2024 Outstanding Paraeducators and Paraprofessionals. Last week, 10 paraeducators were surprised with 2024 Outstanding Paraeducator Awards. They are a vital part of our educational ecosystem in the Canyon School District. They show up every day, do a great job with all of our students. So in recognition of the heavy responsibilities that our paras shoulder, our Special Education and Related Services Department gave 10 awards to our outstanding paras: Sarah, Raquel, Megan, Hillary, Anna, Michelle, Kendra, Nikki, Amy, and Bridget. Their names and their respective schools are all on the website. Take a look at that. It has photos of all of them receiving their awards for being outstanding paras in the Canyon School District. Derek? And finally, our honorees for 2024, the last ones of the school year, are the class of 2024. Last week, about 2,500 seniors from Alta, Brighton, Corner Canyon, Diamond Ridge, Hillcrest, and Jordan High Schools earned their diplomas. And many of these graduating seniors, including the students who completed their time at Jordan Valley and at the Life Skills Academy, they started with us in preschool or kindergarten. But some are now bound for such top-tier institutions as Duke and Stanford, Rice, Purdue, MIT. Others are headed out into the world for some years of service to their faiths, or they are launching careers. Now, in all, this year's graduating class earned $50 million in scholarship offers. Among the graduates are National Merit Scholars, Sterling Scholars, award-winning musicians, scientists, photographers, artists, and community advocates who have already donated thousands and thousands of hours of community service. So it is one for the record books, for sure. Now, per tradition, members of the Board of Education also wear graduation rights to celebrate the accomplishments of graduating seniors. And the class of 2024 included sons, nephews, friends, neighbors, people that we have seen from many years in Canyons District High Schools. I think we see up there Mrs. Neibauer, Mrs. Schill, with their sons who are members of the graduating class. And I don't know how tall your nephew is, Amanda, but he's very tall. So, Derek. And you'll also see there Mrs. Millerberg's very first commencement rites since she became a member of the Board of Education. And also Hillcrest's ceremony was visited by royalty, a queen mother from Ghana, whose grandson was part of the class of 2024 Hillcrest Huskies. And as our seniors head out into the world, we hope they will remember the words that could have been read when they first started with us in elementary school. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You are on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the one who will decide where to go. Congratulations to the class of 2024. President Schill, we turn the time back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is patron comments, and tonight we do not have any patrons wanting to comment. So we will go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. So I will now ask for a motion to approve that. And please read each item individually.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes approval of minutes for May 21st, 2024, approval of hire and termination reports, approval of student overnight travel, approval of purchasing bids, and approval of Utah Fits All Scholarship participation.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second to that?
I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion to that motion? Yes, Mr. Edel.
I'm going to recuse myself of item D, approval of purchasing bids, as it includes a purchasing bid for a company of a close family member.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. So the next item on the Director of ISD.
Long time no see. I am very excited tonight to be officially proposing a finalized curriculum of Thrive Time, our life skills learned daily for our students in kindergarten through 8th grade. You've heard many updates over the last 2 years from Dr. Brian McGill and the work that our departments and many great educators across the district have done to make this happen. Maybe. I am using the arrow buttons. Fair question. We just advance from there. Do I point to you? Okay. Perfect. So while Derek is advancing the slide, I'll just highlight that the Thrive Time development came together. As you know, the requirement to implement a social and emotional learning program is outlined in Utah code. And then several years ago, you as a board advocated for a curriculum that reflected the values and needs of our community, to which we then began work in drafting our own curriculum and writing our own specific lessons to be able to support those needs. Canyon stakeholders, including parents and guardians, reviewed every single lesson, and feedback was provided across many junctures. And I'm going to walk you through and remind everybody of that timeline here in just a moment. The next one, perfect. Thanks, Derek. One more. So the development process of Thrive Time began in the summer of 2022. And we kind of organized our development process across several phases, which are represented by the different colors here in this timeline. So this timeline walks through the initial development that began, as I mentioned, in the summer of 2022, in which we invited teams of educators, both classroom teachers, as well as student wellness staff, so counselors, social workers, and school psychologists, to be organized in teams to write those initial drafts of the lessons. We then moved into a review phase, revised the lessons, tested the lessons, revised again, tested again, and revised again. And I'm going to walk you through the specifics of each of those here now. So in phase one, Derek, thank you. The teams were organized and developed vertical units based on the specific characteristics that we identified. And those teams wrote the lessons kindergarten through 8th grade. We then took those lessons and moved them through a 6-part review process that involved many different stakeholders. So we reviewed the content for accuracy. That included a lot of specialists in Dr. McGill's department and in my department. We also then looked at each lesson and looked at how we could strategically, when appropriate, integrate digital citizenship so that the lessons really encompass both the digital and the physical world. And then we added explicit digital citizenship lessons to each particular unit. Cabinet members then spent time going through each lesson to make sure that we were in compliance with policy and code and what the board had directed us to do. The instructional supports team then went through to ensure that the pedagogy was aligned with our framework, but also doable for classroom teachers. We then worked with the Parent Advisory Council across several meetings to review every single lesson from that family perspective and identify any areas that we needed to adjust. We then took every lesson and ran it through a program to check for plagiarism and copyright. And then we took all of that feedback and we made the revisions based on all of that 6-part review. And we moved then into the next phase of review. So Derek, thank you. That led us to the optional field test part of our implementation and development rather. So in the spring of 2023, so last spring, we asked schools to participate in an optional field test so that we could have teachers who were currently teaching use the lessons and give us feedback based on how they went so that they would be ready for full implementation. It was optional at that time, so teachers could opt in, teams could opt in, or whole schools could opt in, and then we collected feedback. During this time, all of the lessons were also publicly available and posted online so that any family or any stakeholders rather really could provide us feedback based on what they were either experiencing with their students participating in the lesson or just having taken the time to actually review those lessons. And that stayed up during the entire optional field test. Those lessons and feedback we then took back over the summer, last summer, and spent time revising. We revised so that this fall, that moves us into phase 3, thank you. Every single school was assigned to participate in the targeted field test. So each school was assigned one specific unit and they were asked to implement every single lesson in that unit. We then sent very targeted feedback to each stakeholder because we knew that every teacher was implementing at least one of the units. We asked them very specific questions related to the teaching component of it. We also then asked schools to administer a feedback survey to all of the students so that we could get their perspective on the lessons. And you can see there that we had 400 teachers respond during the solicitation of that feedback period and 6,000 students responded. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Teachers had some tweaks that they asked us to make regarding time, some of the resources, making them a little bit more examples, more age appropriate. And so we made some of those tweaks as well. Again, during this time, the lessons remained posted on the internet and the feedback opportunity for families to submit feedback was also available during this entire year. We have not had any family feedback submitted through that online form this entire year. So that brings us to now and what we are proposing. So the lessons have been completely, I won't say completely revised, but given the feedback from the teachers and the students, we did make some additional tweaks and we now feel like they are in their final form and ready to be published for final proposal and full implementation this fall. So as a reminder, Thrive Time is a curriculum that is focused on specific competencies that we know students need to be able to thrive outside of the classroom. It is one piece in creating a bigger picture of social and emotional learning for our students that includes the school systems that our schools have in place related to positive behavior interventions and supports, as well as what our classroom teachers put in place for their school or their class PBIS. We have our tiered behavior supports for students who need additional support and behavior or additional skills being taught. And then, of course, it all hinges on the positive relationships that the adults make with our students. Thank you. What we want to make clear and what we have continued to say when we have worked with families, with our educators, and with our leaders that Thrive Time is not a comprehensive wellness program. It is not therapy or behavioral treatment. And we certainly do not in the lessons tell students what to think or what to believe. And then we also have reiterated that Thrive Time is only successful when we have the adults also modeling those particular skills that we're trying to teach the students. Did it work? I think this is the next one. So the full curriculum includes 6 specific units. And in those units, there are 4 primary lessons related to that particular characteristic, as well as 1 digital citizenship lesson. And then for every unit, there is at least 1, sometimes up to 3 bonus lessons if there are additional needs for the classroom or a grade level to teach additional lessons in that particular area. And those units are, we can go to the next one, thank you. The units are building resilience, setting goals, making responsible decisions, understanding our community, respecting myself and others, and resolving conflict. Thank you. The lesson structure that you see here is for elementary, but it is quite similar for middle school as well. In that 15 and 20 minutes, the lessons are organized first with the greeting, which the teacher welcomes the students and sets the tone for learning. They then move into the sharing, and then the learning activity is where the bulk of the instruction takes place, and then it wraps up with a closing message. And again, for middle school, slightly different terminology, but a very similar structure in terms of flow. Thank you. Here is an example of a final lesson. This one comes from the Making Responsible Decisions unit. You can see it's grade 4. And so you can see the aesthetics of how it is laid out for our teachers in that particular flow that I mentioned in the previous slide. You can see the learning intention on the left column, all of the materials that the teacher will need. We made sure to include a relevance of why teaching this particular skill in this lesson is important. And then you can see the extending the lesson opportunity that the teacher has to be able to reinforce those skills during the rest of the week, to reteach or do what is necessary based on the teacher's particular needs for her students or his students. This is an example of the digital citizenship layout. So digital citizenship lessons, as I mentioned, are in every single unit across the grades. And so we've taken the lessons that we've done previously and we've vetted them from Common Sense Media and adapted them into our lesson format and then organized them into the fitting lessons so that, again, we have that connection to the digital world as well to be able to reinforce the skills in that setting. And then part of every unit also includes an opportunity to be able to share with families what will be taught within this particular unit. So you see here an example of a letter going home to the families that outlines the skills taught, that outlines a description of the particular unit, and then some suggestions or opportunities if the parents would like to do some additional either foundational building or reinforcing at home. And then what you have on juxtapose that is an example of the developmental standards within a particular unit and what that looks like across the grade level band. So this continues with the example of building resilience. So you can see what the overall competency is listed at the top of the box, and then it breaks down the specific skills developmentally of what we would expect our kindergartners through second grade to be able to know and understand by the end of these particular lessons across those 3 grades, our 3rd through 5th graders, and then our 6th through 8th graders. So those are the ultimate standards, so to speak, that we're working towards over the course of implementing this curriculum. And then finally, this is an accessible link that's posted on board docs through this presentation where the lessons, the final lessons, can be previewed online. Teachers will have access to them digitally and in print version if that is what they wish once and if the board chooses to approve this final curriculum. So with that, are there any questions?
Okay, any questions, board or comments? Mrs. Oaks?
Amber, I was just ruminating that the last time, well, at the beginning of when SEL became a major issue in our district, we had parents packing the room, lots of anger, lots of posters and creative presentations, and lots of emails. I think it is a profound compliment to Dr. Miguel and the rest of your department that has been involved that I don't know about the rest of the board, but I have not received any emails of concern, complaints, anger, frustration, and there's clearly no one here. which that's a great thing. Actually, I mean, I've looked at all of these lessons, the ones that have come across, and I'm like, this is great. It's awesome content. And I think for as hard of a lift as it has been, in the end, I'm really grateful that we made that choice as a district. I think that it was the best way to go. And I don't hear, like, during today's crazy political climate and others where we feel like we're in the middle of a lot of culture wars. I'm so grateful this is not one we are fighting. It just, anyway, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Mrs. Nybar?
I too wanted to say thank you. What a huge and heavy lift, and it's very successful. And I've looked at a lot of those lesson plans and they're fantastic. And I would say, as far as the zero parent feedback, I do know there have been parents actually that have contacted me that have actually met with Dr. McGill and looked at the lesson plans. But the cool thing about it is as soon as they see them, they've been ecstatic and really happy about it. So I do think, parents are watching, but they're very happy with what we've done. And I think this is a great success story. I think this is a great example to other districts. Although it was a considerable amount of work, we've been able to teach, very important life skills for these children, but remove any agendas or biases or things like that. And so, what a great safe space for these kids to learn these really important skills. So thank you very much. Of course.
Okay, Mrs. Pedersen.
I just wanted to share from the teacher side. I haven't had any complaints from them of late, but they had concerns earlier in the process that they weren't, drop and load, you could just pull it up and just do it. And I am not hearing that anymore because you have listened. I appreciate the fact that your group has completely listened to what they have been concerned about and worked to address those. And I think as I've read through the lessons, I can see them fitting in their time frame. In the beginning, I'm going, oh no, this 10-minute lesson is really 40.
Yeah.
Just I tell you.
That was some of the
But-
most
but-
common feedback we received.
Yeah. And I look through it now and I'm going, yeah, I can see that happening exactly in the time frame that even when the kids try to drag you off, we could still get that done without it imposing upon the rest of our day. And so I appreciate that. And I'm hoping that these skills, as we continue to build them with the elementary and middle school students, we can somehow capture those skills in the high school and reinforce those as well. Because obviously we don't have this program at that level, but there's got to be a way that we can capture or at least remind. Anyway, we'll figure something out. You always do. You guys are miracle workers. So thank you so much. Your group has worked like crazy and I really, really appreciate this program.
Okay, Mrs. Tingy.
Yeah, I just also want to go on the record and thank you and your team and for the countless hours and for listening to feedback, for being willing to stick with it till we get it to this place that it is right now.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful, and I too haven't heard anything but positive about this. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Mrs. Nybar.
One other thing, for those that are watching, can you just remind publicly how parents can preview lessons? We have that available, but
Yes, so it's available on canyonsdistrict.org/thrive time. Those lessons are all available for download and view. If they would prefer a print copy, they can certainly reach out to Dr. McGill, or they'll be able to this fall connect with their school and view any of those copies there.
awesome. Thanks for that communication. And just a little side note, what an awesome thing to have that ability for that accessibility and transparency. So I also think that just moves mountains as far as building confidence and trust. So thank you so much. Agreed.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I want to add my thanks, and I know it's been a ton of work, and I really appreciate you and Dr. McGill and your departments, and then also just the parents that were on those first committees, because I know they spent hours and hours, and that was really helpful to get them where they are right now. So,
Is there anything that you need me to be prepared to come back with for the second reading and possible action?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Okay, the next item is item B, and that is the legislative policy update. And Jeff Christensen, Assistant Legal Counsel, will lead us in this section of the agenda.
Thank you, President Schill. I was happy to have a Hawk graduate this year. Actually, that's really gratifying to go to a graduation ceremony, not only for my son, but just for all the students. But it's not quite as good as our double header feature this evening, which is a policy update followed by a budget update. So they said in the early 1920s, for a single ticket, you could get a double feature. This meeting's free. So we got a policy update and a budget update. So I have not received any feedback respective to these policies. As I indicated in the first reading, these policies are here for second reading possible action to align with state statute and legislative materials that were proposed by the legislature. Our board governance update is primarily definitional because they've added a few more provisions related to what they term relevant and definitions of meetings and electronic meeting. And in terms of procedures for the board, this is more cosmetic to the policy than adjustment in our procedures. In terms of administrating medication to students, this bill addressed when there is an adrenal insufficiency for a student. And what this allows is for the administration, the nurses, to train employees, those that volunteer. The statute states you can't mandate anyone to participate. And then we provide in our policy the outline of the statute and how that is arranged. So there's procedures for administering that medication. And then we also have a minor update for providing medications for over the counter to students in elementary and secondary schools. And what we'll do is attach the annual standing order from the physician to our policy. That on board docs right now, you have the 2023 version that'll be updated. And the rest are just for the rest of the revisions are for cosmetic changes to align with current practice. Research approval process and surveys. This is an update pursuant to HB 182. The primary issue in listening to the presentation regarding the bill was to free up time in classrooms for students to engage in learning instead of participate in surveys. So they're through the registration process are required annually to provide permission for certain surveys as outlined in the statute, early warning systems, social emotional learning, and school climate surveys. At the current time, Canyons doesn't participate in all of those, but we do some school climate surveys. So that registration process will be included in our online registration. Then we've also updated, there was language to update certain topics for which you need parent consent before you can issue a survey. And that's what we've termed sensitive topics. They deal with where a student may disclose personal information related to their family or other sensitive topics related to family income, mental health, etc. So those require parent consent. In addition, there is language in the statute now in our policy which would address transfer students. You can't rely on a signature from a previous school district to administer surveys. If we have someone transfers in during the part of the year, we'll need to follow up and obtain written consent before issue any surveys. And then the last piece is just outlining statute where you can't make a survey conditional upon a reward or consequence. The last two policies are revised pursuant to the sensitive materials review amendments. I looked today, it appears on Thursday's agenda for USBE, they have potential amendment related to their HB or their USBE rule. Was not able to see the content, so I'll have to take a look at that. That could potentially have some bearing on USBE's process and how they'll address part of the statutory issues related to sensitive materials. Our policy includes the statutory definitions required under the update to the sensitive material statute. And then we have in our instructional materials policy and our library policy added definitions and procedures to address the process that's been outlined in state statute for review of sensitive materials. I included in the first reading the majority of the policy related to those procedures. It requires an initial review of a plausible claim, then removal of the sensitive material while panels conduct a objective sensitive material review, and then while not required, then they can conduct a sensitive materials review, and then it would require informing USBE the results of that analysis. In terms of the board, once there's a determination is made by a sensitive materials review panel or objective sensitive materials review panel, there can be an appeal of that process internally at the district to the Board of Education. And the policy outlines how that will look based on state statute. If an individual is not satisfied with the review conducted internally, they can make an appeal to the board. The board would receive a copy of the individual statement and the objective and sensitive material review conducted by the district, and have an opportunity to vote in a public meeting laying forth their determination. And they could accept the decision of the panel that brought the issue forward. These are for second reading possible action. I can answer questions relative to these two policies. What we will do with respect to these policies is they include all of the necessary elements to be in line with the statute. And then we would be in compliance pertaining to these issues related to sensitive materials.
Okay, thank
Can
you.
answer any questions.
Yeah, board, are there any questions, or otherwise, if we want to make a motion, we could make a motion? Mr. Edel.
I move that we adopt policies 100.01 board governance, policy 500.42 administering medication to students, policy 600.15 research approval process and surveys, policy 600.02 instructional materials. Of note, I did intentionally leave off 600.06 for a separate vote.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So is there any discussion to that motion? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so is there a reason why you left that one policy off? Could you explain?
Yeah. So I thought that the earlier ones were pretty easy to pass. But I have issues voting for the other one. I know that I helped write it. And it's a good policy that's forced upon us by state law. Nonetheless, I have issues voting for a policy that provides parents from other areas with rights and control over our children and our own parents. And so I have other things I could say, but I didn't prepare anything. So.
Okay, thank you. Because I was just wondering if you were holding it because of because USBE may be coming out with.
That would be a great reason, but that's not
okay.
it.
Okay, Mrs. Tingy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Edel, for explaining your reason for doing that. And as far as my understanding with the USBE board rule, that it is not likely to affect our process. Is that?
I I saw a previous version of their rule and it did not affect our process at that time. I haven't seen what appears to be on their agenda for Thursday. I anticipate it will primarily deal with their procedures for notifying schools and receiving information, but I can't presume exactly to know. So we'll just review it. I don't think it will impact what we've prepared as far as a policy is concerned.
So with that being said, I feel like I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and approve our policy. And if there is something drastically that we need to address, but I feel like we have, as a committee, have talked through the process according to the law and according to our responsibility based on what USBE's role in this whole process is. And I feel like our policy is good, in a good place. So I move that we approve policy 600.06, selection and reconsideration of library materials.
I'll give that a second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second for that one remaining policy. Is there any discussion or comments to that? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so we have 5 yeas and then 2 nays, which was Mr. Edel and Mrs. Nybar. Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Christensen. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the 2024-2025 budget update. This is a second reading, and Mr. Leon Wilcox, Business Administrator, will present this.
Thank you, President Schill. I really enjoyed, Jeff's presentation on graduation. I just was reflecting back to my graduation back some 30+ years ago. I don't want to date myself. I was in love with this is true. I was actually in love with a girl back then, and but she only knew 4 vowels. She didn't even know I existed. I know Jeff mentioned policy. Jeff mentioned policy in a budget update. I only have about 100 slides, but don't worry, it's going to be like that clock. It's just going to fly by. So
Luck.
just to hit over our budget's huge, $500+ million. It's, we could talk about it so many meetings, just some highlights. Our budget, we posted online. So we had to do that before June 1st. So it's actually been out there. We posted it on Friday, the 24th. So it's been out there since then. Last meeting, we went through several funds. We won't go through those again, but they're the pages in the budget. Again, the budget is linked to board docs there that we have the proposed budget. One update on our capital fund that I want to go over quickly, and that's Hillcrest High. We plan to enlarge the track and replace the turf. But the issue we're having is just some design issues and what it's going to take to remove some of the concrete at the south end. So what we've decided to do is press pause, not on the job, but we still will do the job. But for this football season, they're going to play on the current turf. We're going to have it maintained and tested, make sure its safety meets the fall standards, when students are tackled there. And then we'll come back after the season and start doing it then. They may not have a track next spring. It depends on how we time that out and schedule that out. So we'll have to work with the school on that on their track events. This is a big project to enlarge that track from 6 to 8 lanes with concrete bleachers there. So we were hoping that was going to happen, but it's just not going to happen for this upcoming season. I wanted to make you aware of that. All the other projects that I went over last time are moving forward. Now we'll get into more of our operating budget. Again, I want to emphasize our enrollment. That's always the big driver of our enrollment. You can see we're decreasing. We know it's 2 main factors based on our demographic study that we had done last year. You see that 34,178 was the peak year in 1920. And you can see where we've gone down since. Down almost 1,500 students in the 5 years. We'll get to this later, but our average home price is now worth $700,000. That just makes it so difficult for young families to afford living here. And our birth rate, I went to a conference last month. They said our birth rate in the state, they came out with a 2023 number, and our replacement rate was now down to 1.85. We know that 2.1 is the replacement. We're not replacing ourselves. Nationwide, I think they said it was down to in the 1.6 range. So and you can see we just continue to expect to go down. We don't see that changing. Maybe in the mid to late 30s, we see that changing, but anytime soon, we really don't. We hope it doesn't go down as fast as that, but there's our projections. Just one ray of hope on our enrollment, and big thanks to Kirsten and Jeff for this. You know, our out of district students who live in a neighboring district but attend one of our schools versus students who live in our district and attend a school in a neighboring district. You know, we've made big progress there. The 18-19 year, we had about 469 students net loss, but over the years, we've now come to a net gain of 138 students. So you can see we're almost even with Alpine, almost even with Murray as far as students attending, and we still capture quite a few from Jordan. Do lose, you know, a consistent amount to Salt Lake, and we've reduced the number going to Granite, but still lose a handful, well, quite a few there, mainly on the northeast side of the bound of the district, going over to the Skyline feeder system. We went over some inflationary examples. These were really hitting us hard a year ago. There's some of them still have leveled out, but others are still hitting us. Fuel for our buses, you know, we go to the pump, it's still expensive, but it's not expensive as it was a year ago. Part of that is also because we're not doing the midday run for the kindergarten this past year. Natural gas has gone down quite a bit, but this was actually a 50% increase from 22 to 23. So we're still a net 40% increase, but it has tapered off, but still a big increase, you know, in the last 2 years. Water and sewer, that's now the big increase that we're facing. Lots of the districts are adding on sewer and water infrastructure and passing those costs on. Electricity, we're about the same. And our parts and maintenance just to maintain our buildings just keep going up and up too. So those are just, you know, not as bad as it was a year ago, but still there are some inflationary costs. Another one just to address quickly is our SRO costs. You know, we've been involved a little bit in the last few years in teacher wars, on salary wars, they've called them. But our police precincts have done the exact same. They've had their own salary wars, starting to taper off. But right now, the cost of an average officer is, you know, about 135 to 150 amongst our 4 police precincts. Right now, we pay them $45,000 per officer. We have a 5-year agreement with each of the municipalities and Unified PD. Those do expire this year, so we'll have to renew those. So what, you know, an SRO spends close to 60% of their time at our school. You know, they're there before the bell and stay pretty much all day unless they get called out on an emergency, and then do an after school, you know, follow-ups too in many instances. So we're looking, as we've talked with a couple municipalities, well, we've talked to 3 of the 4 right now. We're looking at increasing that to $75,000 per officer, which is, you know, we have 16 that we pay for. He times that out, it's almost $500,000. We do not reimburse for their uniform, their car, things, the phone. You know, we know that if they're going to hire them, the city's going to have to supply that. But we, you know, do feel like, well, they're in our school, so we do feel like we need to reimburse for, you know, some of their salary and benefits. So we'd also look at maybe 75 the first couple of years, do a 5-year agreement, then amp that up a little bit the last year or 2 of the agreement as well. We'll bring you those when they're finalized, but that's where we're looking at. That's a big cost increase right there. Getting into more of our, just our high level budget, you can see the amount of money we anticipate bringing in next year, about not a whole lot more than this year, about 385 million. We lose ESSERs, but are gaining. We do expect to get more tax dollars. But you can see just how much we've grown. Our budget's grown for the last 5 years. This is where we get our money by source. Again, about 38% is by property taxes. State restricted now is past our state unrestricted amount. That's not necessarily bad because, you know, it does go to special education, does pay the educator salary adjustment, does pay the, you know, CTE, but, you know, we still want unrestricted money as much as we can get, but now it's past that. But our federal will start going way down. It has been around that 7 or 8% in the past. So that's our revenue by source. Again, looking at our expenses, again, you can see we've gone from 5 years ago, 313 million up to we're expecting to spend 394 next year. Again, that's a lot. And here's how we do expect to spend this. This is by the activity or what we call the function of what individuals do for us. We want as much as we can going right in the classroom. That's the instruction, which we do over 60%. Then going around clockwise, facilities, that includes our utilities, they're 9%, and our maintenance and our custodial staff. Our staff services, that's our coaches. And that's also the 32 hours of PD that our teachers get. School admin's about 7%. Student services, that's our counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, they're about 6.8. And then centrals, you know, communications, payroll, accounting, IT, transportation is our busing, and then our overall district, you know, is less than 1%. Here's the object or the more detail of how it goes. Again, education's always going to be people driven. You know, it's all people, and that's why it's 90%. Has been in the past, you know, 87, 88. Salaries go up. It's, you know, approaching the 90% mark. But it's always going to be people. Don't see AI replacing that. Here's how our fund balance looks. Keep in mind, you know, our revenues, expenses, we always, you know, budget for, you know, kind of the worst case scenario and know that that's not going to happen. Historically, we're always 2 to 3% under budget. I do expect this year to actually be a little bit higher than 3% under budget as we close out this 24 year. We're actually having a pretty good year in many areas. But we do, you know, we do think we'll be, you know, but when you have that big of a budget, 1 or 2% matters a lot. And, you know, 3% is over $11 million in our budget, but we do expect to be that way. You can see our ending fund balance. Again, we don't think it will be that low because we won't be spending that much money. But again, that is what we're budgeting. We will continue to use this allowance that we've done the last 2 years, and that we have money left in our debt fund, which we will this year for technology programs and projects. That's allowed under state law, and we've done that the last 2 years under that code right there. Going to completely change gears on our numbers, and we're going to talk property values and property taxes the rest of the way here. So we got their average home value list last year, and as I mentioned there, it's that average 2024 average. We've now crossed that 700,000 mark. I can't imagine what my parents or grandparents thinking that an average home would now be $700,000, and that's average. Last year it was 652, almost 653. That's about a 7.5% increase. You can see it by municipality, the average by municipality going down. The biggest increases are those in unincorporated areas, White City, and then Sandy. We didn't add many new homes. We only added 157 homes to our tax rolls this last year. Most of them in Draper, in that west part of Draper. We did have some in Sandy and Midvale. The median, of course, if you go back to your old stats class, you know, the median is the median point. We're half or below, half or above. That's not as big as the average. So that's now about 609 up from 571. So that's not as big as the average. You know, I think that we have several outlier large homes, you know, in our district. If you look it up in the Alta area there, right? And so they didn't go up, you know, the median did not go up, but on the notice that we have to prepare for our tax sharing, it does go by the average, not the median. Again, the average, okay? So these are, using that, I've gone out and I want to just emphasize, these are the estimated rates that we're coming up with. Again, what we're budgeting is on that my far right column there where it says the budget increase. The two ones that I want to highlight are, you know, that basic rate. That is, the state is predicting that to go up. Now, whether or not how much it goes up, we'll actually see because they don't set that yet, but that is what they've told us, and that could be a big impact to us here. The voted and the capital ones, the ones in green, are what we're projecting to go up, you know, based on bringing more income into the district for our lease revenue bonds and for some operating expenses. Ironically, you add them all up, the rate's almost the exact same as it is this year. Just values are higher. So that's the driver right there, and that drives the value that people will pay up, okay? But the rates basically the same. You can see it may actually be, you know, that's the rate we have played this year is the lowest rate we've ever paid, and next rate will be about the same, but again, our values are higher. Just to review an average property tax statement, I want to take a minute to go over this. I think this is key, what people will see. So this is taking the average home this year versus the average home last year. So that same home, 652,000 last year, 703 this year. Based on if we bring in $9 million, $4 million for capital to pay our lease revenue bonds, $5 million for operations, as we haven't captured inflation the last 5 years. That brings in $9 million. The average homeowner would see that $93 increase right there where it says if checks, kind of the middle column actually, if 2004 change, if increase approved, that $93. Again, we talked about it roughly being $90. So, you know, there's going to be a little rounding in there, but right in that $90 on the average home. That's 6.1% more than they paid last year. The difference, I think, is that second line, and that's the state basic rate. So if the state keeps that rate the same, which they're proposing, last year the average homeowner paid $574. I mean, last year the average homeowner paid $505 rounding. This year they'd be up to $574. So it's about a $69 increase there. That does not show or is highlighted anywhere on the property tax statement, which I think is key. Our number will be highlighted. That $93 will be shown there, okay? So if you look at the green box, this is not, again, as I said last time, the green box is not on the property tax notices, but you know, people will see it. The average home increased 7.7%, $50,000. But the taxes owed is 8% more, or $163, because it's that $90, 93 we're collecting, and roughly 69 from the state basic rate. So that's, you know, that could, you know, people will see the total. You look at the, you know, if you see the total, you'll see that, you know, they may do some comparison across. They won't see that green box, but you know, lots of people do look at just the total, and they'll see that big increase there for schools. I should say the state basic rate does not say Canyons on it. It used to, years ago, they always write Canyons basic rate, but they do not do that anymore. But, you know, most taxpayers do link that to schools. Because it does say schools. Then, of course, going down, you'll have the Salt Lake County tax, your city tax, your water tax. You know, everybody's will be different. The counties will be different, but all the cities and water districts will be, you know, different going down, so. But I just wanted to note that, because that's a key thing, I think. Could be a key thing. Again, we don't know where they'll go with this basic rate. Hopefully it's lower and it's not as impactful. I just put this slide out there just to show, you know, how our certified rate works. And I've done this for the last 5 years, including this year. You can see the second line there, you know, you as the board control 3 rates. It's the quoted, our board, and our capital. And you can see the revenue, that's that yellow line there, has remained relatively constant the last 3 years because we haven't exceeded the certified tax rate. We got 98.5 million last year, and this year we're looking at 102. The reason it's gone up a little bit is because of new growth, new properties coming on, but nothing significant the last five years. We look at the top line, the basic, again, that basic rate the state charges, that's where we get our WPU. So, you know, we do acknowledge that. But you can see what, you know, 5 years ago, we got $39 million. Next year, if they keep the rate the same, we could be paying 55, which is close to the 55 we paid 2 years ago. So we'll see how that goes. I remember Amber was the USBA past president that year. And there was a lot of discussion on that basic rate because, you know, that property values had gone up 30% that year and the tax rate stayed the same. So people had a big tax bill from the legislature. They brought in $160 million more. So I should note that the basic rate is controlled by the state, not by you guys. I try to put in the graphs to show the graphically, but it didn't turn out great. But you can see there is a little bit of an increase there. Our debt rate, you know, to pay our bonds will be pretty much capped at that 45 million going the next few years. That's as high as it will go. I just want to say what the average homeowner, our certified rate and the state's rate, just to back those out. Again, this is going back for the last 6 years. You know, on the basic rate, you know, about 6 years ago, the average homeowner paid $384 to that. If everything holds true, it'll be about $574 this year. That's $189 more, or nearly a 50% increase. Our rate, if everything holds true, you know, they paid $970 6 years ago in FY20 and FY25, assuming we go with the tax increase, it'll be $1142, or about 17% increase over those 5 years, 6 years. So you can see the $93 and the $69 increase there. So that's, you know, a big thing as we look at our tax increase on the average home. We haven't heard much, you know, we put the budget out and haven't really heard a whole lot about the tax increase. We've heard some comments way back on, or at least revenue bonds, but so far haven't received a whole lot. But again, people haven't got their tax notices either. So just to review our budget items, and a final wrap up is our 24-25 budget includes the following: a $5 million increase in the general funds, all the negotiated agreements with the teachers, the SPs, the employees, administrators. Our property insurance going up 400,000. The elementary prep time with some BTS integration at a few schools that we can. Lane increases for the paraeducators, the SROs, proposed increases for utilities, supplies, and curriculum. All that said, if we keep that tax rate the same, we'll have about 900,000 left. So we can talk about that as we wrap up here. Nate is here and we feel like our biggest need is special education. And we feel like our biggest need is more training for our teachers. I can have Nate speak to that if needed. Right now, they only receive 9 hours per year, which is not very much. And most of our special ed teachers are younger, right? They're newer, probably need more, could use more training. Last year we had to bring in 42 new hires because we had our attrition rate was so high. This year, thanks to Nate's great work and his staff, looks like we'll cut that in half and have about 20 new hires for next school year. We'd like to get that down in 10. We know we'll never get it to 0, but just because of life changes, people will always come and go, but we would like to get that down. And we think if we could give them more training, they'd be better prepared for their jobs, more confident in their jobs, and could succeed better and help reduce that, help improve that retention rate. So there are a couple options we could look at. One would be a 3-day training for our 255 educators. That's about $321,000 or 170,000 per day. Or a 5-day training, more intensive. Again, that'd be about $535 a day. We could look at a 3-year training program and then do some more intensive coaching moving forward. We may have that the first week of peaks, but that may interfere with the other special education teachers, but we'd work with the date on that. Right now, we feel like we have enough teachers as our class size in our ACCs are 13.5. We feel that's comparable to our other neighboring district. We do have an advantage in that we have more paras and more full-time paras than our neighboring districts to support the teachers there. So there's one option there. 2 other options here is to look at increasing our FTE bod cushion. Right now, our average teacher is about $110,000 with benefits. Right now, we have a large cushion of around 30, but right now we're down to 2 starting next year. We usually like to start the year with 4 to 6. And, it's mainly in the elementaries. That's the issue right now. And that's because our elementaries are decreasing in enrollment. Principals have to make that tough decision. What grade do you cut? And do you have that invokes the 30 to 32 students in a classroom in 4th or 5th grade, whereas other classrooms may have the 16 or 18. So that's an issue right there. And that's probably just going to continue as our enrollment decreases. I see that continuing on. We do have a few schools looking at split grades for next year. It's workable, but not an ideal solution. So there is that. We could add a few more teachers out there. We could also, we've talked about a chief privacy officer in IT. That'd be an administrative position, about 170,000. I still think we can look at our internal staff there and see if we could move people around and get better coverage there. I do feel like we're pretty productive in the cybersecurity realm right now, but we do need to improve, and we should improve there. And the last thing is we could look at just dropping the tax rate a little bit, because the basic rates could be high. We don't know the final amount yet, but lower that down. So not a lot, but look at maybe instead of a $5 million increase, a $4 million increase in our general fund, saving $8 to $10 on the average home. So,
Amber, can I speak to that real quick? So
Yes.
just a couple of comments on the FTE slide. I'm glad you pulled, not sped, the next one. We've talked a little bit about this, but I'm just putting some other ideas out there. One is we've talked about possible forced transfer at the start of the school year, and you can imagine the fallout that would come with that to try to balance, some of these numbers. I think one thing, and we've already underscored this, just the number of newcomer students coming into the district, the needs that are becoming more and more diverse, from accelerated students to students that are living in poverty to multilingual. So I want to highlight this issue, that it's really growing rapidly, and thinking about how, we might address it. I think the cushion definitely
that's always kind of been our go-to. And so as Leon's talking about next year, I think right now we're on track for 4 split classrooms. That's not best practice. I think this group, I'm speaking to the choir. But these are things we definitely, we really need to think about, and how we go about that. And one last thing and this may be a question that we take back into one of our policy committees, and that's transfers and permits in the district. We've always been a district of choice. I think we support that. We've really tried to accommodate where students go, but with all of these added factors, the way that we permit currently, it really adds to that fluctuation of these classrooms. So I'm not throwing out a solution. Unfortunately, I wish I had one for you to just say, hey, here's an easy fix. But I'm not sure what that looks like. We're kind of in this interesting paradigm, right? Like I look at those out of district numbers, and we work so hard to turn that trend around to encourage and recruit students out of the district. But at the same time, we have this flow of students in district that also cause these imbalances in classroom sizes. So just a lot for us to process, but I appreciate Leon's work on this and yours. I mean, additional resources obviously are going to help, right? But we have some bigger issues that are underlying that we've really got to look at. So just add that to the conversation.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Oh, just to wrap up the last slide, then we can maybe take questions. Next meeting on the 18th, we're asking you to adopt the FY25 budget. It will be on a tentative basis because we'll give you the final approval will come at the truth and taxation hearing. We'll know the date then. I don't know it now. As I said last time, I think it will be August 6th, but don't know. We hope it actually lines up because that's when we have a scheduled board meeting. At least that's the date will be recommended by the county. We'll try to follow their recommendation. We'll also ask you to adopt a revised budget for this year. Again, we're actually running pretty well, but have you adopt a revised budget. Have to have a public hearing, must allow for public comment. I look back and 5 years ago when we did a tax hearing, we did have a few people come to the public hearing on the budget that year. We usually don't get too many, but we did that year, a small group. And again, it was posted May 24th. It has to be out there for 15 days before you can adopt it. It's also included on board docs. And then we hope to have that certified rate by the 18th meeting so we know where the basic rate is, but I'm afraid it will probably be a few days after that before the state and the USBE, the Property Tax Commission, the State Tax Commission, and the Salt Lake County Assessor's Office get everything wrapped up. So, but we'll let you know on that. So with that, I was wondering if Nate, you could come up. Would you mind just taking a 1-minute overview of, this training need that you discussed with me?
Just in regards to activities.
Yeah, what you and I talked about.
Yeah, so what we would hope to cover is a lot of what our educators need to be expert at in regards to scaffolds, modifications, adaptations, supporting our schools and coming up with different ways to support students in the general education environment, the regular class placements. We just need a lot more robust opportunities to cover our curriculum. We do a lot for different groups. We make significant modifications for some of our more impacted students. And so to be able to do those takes quite the agility. We want to focus a lot on our AAC devices, which is helping our students communicate functionally. A lot of our students in some of those impacted environments need to be able to communicate functionally so that they can get their needs met. We see a lot of behavioral excess when functional communication is low. And so we want to really train our people on how to address those things as well. So there's kind of a sampling of what we would try to cover.
Okay, thank you. Board, do we have any questions for Nate when he's up here? Mrs. Nybar.
Nate, I know we talked a little bit about the 3-day training and then up with a possible combination of like a half FTE.
Mhm.
Is that still something in consideration if it's the 3-day training? Or-
We can take whatever you ask us to do, and we can make it work for sure. Yeah. Like Leo mentioned before, 9 hours is not a lot. So I think anything that we can get will be a substantial improvement. Just to help us. We're restructuring our department. I think I mentioned that a little bit before in regards to kind of really focusing in on instructional supports. And we think that that will blend well with what we're asking to really make an impact. We are hoping for, again, another big, powerful improvement in our retention. The more seasoned are, and I appreciate the paraeducator considerations, because with all that, the more seasoned our people are, the more our students make progress, because as you know, it's just that overall experience will make a significant impact for our students. So.
I really appreciate that. And I think I'm really excited about this stronger focus on instructional supports and high quality learning. I think it falls in line perfectly with our strategic plan and looking at that personalized education opportunity for every type of learner. And so, of course, special ed, there's so much that goes into that with compliance as well. But that extra training for these teachers is just, you can't even put a price on it. So.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tingy?
Yeah, thank you for thinking of this because I feel like this could be a high leverage investment for helping students by helping their teachers and instructors and their aides. So I'm clear, when you say propose a 3-year training program, does that mean like for an educator or a staff member, year 1, year 2, year 3? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm just a believer in results. And so I'd like to come back. I think we need some investment over time because it does take time, but I think I'd like to come back and be able to demonstrate the impact that we've had with the dollars that you allocated so that we can show you that we're making impact and improvement. We're specifically monitored in 14 indicators. I know we've done some of that presentations in the past 3 years, but we would love to show some of the results we have on what we call our Utah improvement plan for special education. We could show some of the results that we get from not only statewide assessments, but some other data collection that could come. And I think that would be something we would owe the public in regards to the allocated dollars and what we're doing with that.
I do, just to maybe clarify your question, all teachers would get trained, whether they're 1, 2, or 3-year teachers, right?
Yes.
But it's 3-year.
Yeah, well, I guess that was kind of my question. So would a teacher 3 years in a row participate in the same training? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, we would adapt based on teacher needs. So we would do a lot of, like I said, with the instructional focus we're planning, we should get a lot of good data from our teacher specialists out in the classrooms and coaching models to collect that information and be able to help funnel with leadership and our collaborative work with school performance. We should be able to get a lot of information about what's relevant and where we're going. As an example, we'd really like to focus this first little bit on progress monitoring. We think that will yield a lot of results. Teachers and professional learning communities use data all the time. But in addition to that, it'll help us to shore up some compliance concerns and some things like that. So I think it's a good double whammy for us to focus on that first.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is all for you, Nate. So
Okay.
thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here. Okay, now just questions in general, and Mrs. Oakes has one for Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you, Leon. That was very comprehensive. There's a lot in there and a lot of moving pieces. One of the questions I have is with regard to our BTS teachers and brain booster teachers. So I know when, as a board, we approved the new schedule for elementary teachers to be able to have an hour of planning time every day. There were a lot of concerns expressed about what would happen with brain booster teachers and their schedules. And that evening, one of the things that we discussed was having follow-up actually this month about retention, how many teachers we may have lost as a result of that, and also better understanding what their schedules have turned out to be. I know there were concerns about how many minutes of passing time they'll have, whether or not they'll actually have planning time themselves. whether or not they're carrying other certain responsibilities like walking students to and from class. Making sure that they have a preserved lunchtime. My understanding is I looked it up today. It looks like we have 4 vacancies for BTS teachers right now that have recently come open. And I think it's important for us to have some follow-up discussion as a board, because if there is some need to have additional monies put towards that to make sure that we are not compromising on that aspect of our kids' learning in elementary, I think that that's important. So, and another follow-up to some of what Superintendent Robbins was talking about. Nancy and I had the opportunity to have conversation the other day with some board members from other districts, as well as the board leadership from the State Board of Education. And we were discussing specifically some of our ML students that are pouring into the district in large numbers. And they all asked, they're aware of this problem and they're having this discussion at the state level, and asked that if we come up with any great ideas or best practices to please share it with them. He said, we're definitely interested in the same thing. So I don't know. I mean, if you have any thoughts on that, they are looking for solutions. And there's a part of me that thinks, maybe we need to be looking to states that have had this issue for a while, like California or Texas. But anyway, just for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any comments to?
Sorry.
Do you have any answers?
I mean, one of the things that, and I don't think any of us have all the solutions with all these different factors that are changing the environment in our classrooms, but really, and I think Paula and our state and federal programs team they're accelerating their work at such a rapid pace. Really, when this issue came forward and we started looking at it, the 3 things that I've heard the most out on listening tour, one was, really clear an onboarding protocol that everybody understands, right? I mean, how do we even get students that need these language services started? And then second was really tiered and sheltered instruction, right? So we're doing a lot with QTEL, trying to get teachers better informed, trained, and a lot of that's out there. It's just Amber's team's done a great job of putting that together, but getting it to the end of the row. And then lastly was wraparound services. How do we support these families? And what I see is that they're hungry to learn. They want to learn English. They're here. But how do we do better to support that? The one thing though that I think resonates with me the most, and this is something looking at practice in micro schools or any school for that matter, and that's class size. I mean, the more that these classrooms are diverse, I remember a few, years ago, we would always say that, class size really wasn't the deciding factor or had the most impact because most of our students were homogenous. It was all the same types of kids. But you look at our students today are so diverse and their needs are so different that, and maybe there's some studies out there that are more current around class size. But, in Utah, and I know I'm banging the drum to the choir again, but I'm an elementary teacher with 30 kids and I've got 4 or 5 ML students now, a couple of newcomers, 3 or 4 SPED students, 3 or 4 kids living in poverty. I mean, you can see how, and we're asking them to differentiate instruction to meet all of those needs. Somehow, some way, we got to drive those numbers down. I mean, and I know that's money and that's an investment, but our classrooms do not look the same as they did even a few years ago.
Yeah, sure, Mrs. Oaks.
So I agree with you that that's a major component. And I know we've had conversations, as was presented, about whether do we add more money to make sure that we can, for instance, not split classrooms at the very least, and also kind of adapt to some of that. I mean, depending on how many ML students are in a classroom, does that mean that school receives a certain level, like index it, you know, with FTE. I think we have to start looking at it. I'd be interested in knowing what those numbers are. I don't know if it's too late at this point in the budget process. It sounds like it probably is. I think that we need to start thinking and considering that and advocating for that up at the state level for sure.
Okay, Mr. Edel?
I just wanted to make a couple comments on a few of the things that you brought forward to us. One of them is you mentioned changing kind of our budgetary needs based on what the state's doing. And I wanted to point out that the state has consistently not allocated income tax funds to the schools, and then they cut income tax. And so then to say because they want to raise property taxes at the same time doesn't necessarily change our budgetary needs to take care of our students. And as someone who lives here, I understand the impacts of that, but that's a state legislature decision. And so I just wanted to call that out for what it is and to say that we still have to take care of our students ultimately. And then for IT, I just wanted to say on that one that I just feel we need to make sure that they can actually handle it and that they're not just saying we can do it. There's an attitude, I think, in the district to just do it. Like the whole district seems to be, we're just going to do it. And I think that's great. Like, I think the attitude's fantastic because everyone's just like, we're just going to do it. Sometimes we can't do it. And so I just want to make sure that as you're having those conversations, that it's a no kidding. Can we do it? And just because my concern is, for some reason, I was thinking of like fighter jets and bombers. I don't fly, but they're always around me and stuff, jets. And I was thinking how, you know, the pilots are the ones who are responsible for making sure that the mission gets done. And that's our classrooms, right? Which are really important, like absolutely essential. At the same time, if the network goes down, then nothing happens and we can't even launch jets. In this case, that's not even the network going down. What we're looking at more is going to be a major breach, which will shut down our schools and which will cost us a lot more money and a lot more headache than anything else will. So with that, I just want to make sure as you're having those conversations that we really can do it and we're really not going to put ourselves in a bad position. And maybe as we look forward, you know, what do we need for the future? Maybe this isn't something we need today, but what are our actual needs instead of just let's do it. And I do admire everyone in the district who's just, we're just going to do it because it's awesome. And I love the attitude with that. And then, yeah, this is such a, these two slides are the hardest slides I think you've ever given us to outline the essential needs that we really have to take care of our students. And so I appreciate you putting it together, but they're hard to see. That's
We're always there. We could come up with another list too. One of the things in, you know, my 20-something years of being in public ed is one thing is always true, and that is always we're going to have far more needs than we have dollars available to meet those needs. And so we've got to prioritize and know that some needs, and I won't call them wants, I'll call them needs, just are not going to be met.
Okay, so board, when you're making your comments, I think Mr. Wilcox is looking for direction on some of these questions. So I mean, I think it would be good if you kind of say what you think about how that money should be spent, or should we decrease the tax increase anyway. So just go
True.
when you comment. Mrs. Tingy?
Okay, thank you, President Schill, for that direction. I was thinking I was going to just go out on a limb and say some of the, because basically what you're asking us to do is help prioritize.
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
So, I really think that, on that first page, the one right before this one, those were all pretty much sunk costs, right? I mean, they're pretty much done. So it's just this last little 800 to 900,000, right, that you're kind of looking at. I personally think the special ed training is a high priority for me. I think we will get a lot of return for that investment. And then, my second priority is the FTE cushion. That's just something that for years and years and years and years, I've hoped that we could figure out a way that we don't have to have elementary school class sizes with 33, 34, 35 in some cases, students in them. And I agree with superintendent's comments about the class size. I just feel like even as we're now competing with other educational providers, this is a place where we, need to start focusing and as in our strategic plan, we have things about personalizing learning and providing individual experiences and hands-on things. And that's almost impossible to do when you have really big classes. So
Okay.
those are the two things that I prioritize.
That's great. Can you say whether you prefer 3 or 5 days? Because I think we need.
Oh,
to
sorry.
decide that.
I think let's start with 3 days. I think, and then it sounds like, they'd report back next year and see how that goes. And if another day is needed, maybe at the time, there'll be
Okay.
something more to consider. So
Okay, great. So 3 days and then the FTE cushion. Then Mrs. Nybar?
I totally agree. We have these needs and saving $9 or $10, I don't think is worth it per household, considering all the needs we have. It might be the spinning clock over there, but it reminded me of Back to the Future. Remember that quote where Doc was like, roads, where we're going, we don't need any roads. Remember that? But we do need roads. We do need infrastructure. This is how we educate our kids. And so I do want to take care of our kids. And so we have to build roads. And I think for me, the biggest thing is the 3-day training for the special ed. I think we do need to give those educators more specialized training, especially when they come right out of college. They definitely need more specified training. And I would submit, I know last meeting when Nate was talking about this, he was saying also that 3-day training would also have when he was talking about his report with ECC, the 3-day training could also have a half FTE. And by doing that, we would be able to have a hybrid program in one of our middle schools that currently doesn't host ACC. So that would help us with our strategic plan of personalized learning per building, 'cause that would allow us to have special ed programs in all of our high schools and middle schools. So that would be my first one. And then the second one would be just same as Nancy's, look to increase the FTE cushion. I'm concerned about the class sizes. I know one of my elementary schools I represent, Ocala, has an issue with this in those 4th and 5th grades. So I'd really like to see that help there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone on this side want to comment?
My comment would be that I agree with Nancy's point of view. I really feel like special ed definitely needs the additional training. And I think 3 days is a good way to start into it and then see what we don't know, see what we're still missing, how much more training that we're going to need. And I would like to explore ways to increase the FTE so that we can drop some class sizes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mrs. Miller?
Not to open a can of worms, but coming from a special education perspective, I agree with your 2 priorities. I think without doubt, but I have some concerns about the 3 to 5 days and just having how they would be structured. So to me, the needs of an incoming special ed teacher are entirely different than someone that has been in practice for 15 plus years. So I think it would be imperative that those days be given some real structure. Because otherwise, I think your audience is as diverse as what the superintendent is speaking of with regard to, their needs. And in the opportunities I've had in this brief period of time when I've been working, it seems like I always end up in after time with the special ed teachers, and their needs are extreme, but I don't find that they are give me more understanding of what to do. They understand what to do. And they have a lot of really good practices already in place. They don't have the time to roll those out. And so I think when you're talking about a pile of money, which is what you're equating days to money, it's imperative that we structure those. I'm all for them, but I think that it takes some tuning to make them be effective. Otherwise, I don't think we won't get our bang for the buck.
And maybe they shouldn't be scheduled all in 3 days in a row. Because you should be able to be time to learn it and then time to practice.
I
and
would
then
roll
come
that
again.
out to the people that are responsible for structuring those. But just it's been in my experience that when I got those days as a professional, there were portions of each one of those that were of value to me. But unfortunately, I would say it was less than 50% when it was rolled out to everyone. Because the diversity of the special ed teachers is extreme, even within an elementary school, secondary, setting. So I think we have to spend some time making sure that those are target appropriate. I'm all for giving them because there's never going to be enough time, ever. But I think they need to be structured. So I'm all for that. And FTE is a plus, an absolute, yeah. So to me, that's a no-brainer.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your input. Mrs. Oaks, do you want to go? Yeah, Mrs. Oaks, then Mr. Edel.
Mrs. Millerberg, you always make me think about things I've never thought of before. I really appreciate that, actually. And you have a really good point. I guess my thought in that respect is that probably for me, the first priority would be FTE, actually. I do think we need to provide support for special ed. But I would think if we can make sure that their class sizes remain a responsible size, that's as helpful as anything, right? I am also interested in seeing what we can do to structure it so that we could eventually have like a unit out at Draper Park Middle in addition to the other middle schools. I don't know if that's a reality this year, but I do think we need to keep looking at it. So those are mine. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, I really do in a very soon to be determined board meeting have follow up on the BTS and brain boosters piece. So that we make sure that we're not dropping the ball on that.
We'll make sure we have that at the 18th.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Edel.
Since I went first and I didn't make any clarifications. My number one priority would be the FTE cushion. But it's pretty pretty slim, right? I feel like I'm pretty well in line with the others here as well. In that I do support a 3-day training option for special education. With that, I would caution us to make sure that we don't inadvertently try to micromanage the process. And while the input is great, making sure that the details are left up to the administrators over the programs. It's just Andrew. And then I do want to lend my support as well to piloting a hybrid program that was mentioned at Draper Park.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Nybar?
A question for Leon. Isn't it true like a half FTE is like, what, $45,000 about?
About close to 55.
Okay. Okay. So that's what we're talking about as far as the hybrid program. At Draper Park, it would just be the ACC students into the ECC class with a half FTE to help. And they currently have been doing some accommodations that way already, just without an FTE. So I was just talking to a mother the other day whose child is just finishing Draper Park and going into the high school. Kind of a common practice actually has been that families in Draper try to recategorize their kids to ECC so they can go to the neighborhood school with their siblings, which, you know, not really the best practice to be recategorizing your kids because there's very different standards and things like that. So to be able to meet the needs, and I know parents that have done visits there, and we've got an amazing teacher there that does a great job of trying to accommodate. And it's probably the most economical way we could do that to try to meet the needs of the community. So rather than create a whole new program.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like the board, I'm going to agree with everyone and support a 3-day, 3-day special ed training and just FTE cushion. And then I don't know if we can put Nate on the spot, but it seems like there's 3, and I would support also a half FTE to Draper Park. Is that possible, or do you want to bring that back? Or I know it was in your presentation, I believe, last time. Yeah, if you can come up and address that, just so we know is that possible, or does it take more money, or?
It would take about 55 more on that. In addition to that, the 3 days.
So what we could do is increase, do that FTE, the 3 days, and it'd be 4 to 5 FTEs added. Does that make sense? That's total. And that half would be included there. So probably be 5 counting that half. So we'll be in that 4.5 general. And I would like to say, we have been looking at some options. I'd like to look at, I think moving forward, we didn't get on it soon enough for next year, but we worry about McKay, Rick, and I worry about our elementary's class sizes the most. We do think there's some leniency in our high schools. We know there are some, choir has 80 kids and they should have 80 kids to make the choir and the band and the gym work. Whereas we know there are classes up there that also have under 15 too. So I think we need to really look hard at how much our class size is at our high schools, especially when we have so many going to C-Tech, have so many taking a seminary, have so many taking an online. So or this type of work release, I really think we need to look at that population and then push maybe FTE down. I think our middle schools are about where they need to be. But I do think we really, I'll say this because I know our high school principals do watch board meeting and they will be throwing arrows at me tomorrow. But I do think there's options, especially when they have concurrent, they have more AP and they have more TSSA and land trust money. So I think there are options there moving forward in future years. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to open a can, but.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank
I
you.
did.
Mrs. Tingy and then Mrs. Nybar.
Thank you, Leon, for bringing that up because I totally agree. I think that there's a lot more flexibility in a high school to make things work because they can do it by a section or a class period at a time, kind of a thing. But in elementary, it's a whole classroom that is affected. And so, so just what I kind of thought of while you were explaining that, maybe we could come up with a matching deal. If we come up with the funds for some FTE, then maybe through that process over time, and like you said, it's probably too late for this year, but that you could match that.
could
We
look
could
at
really
something.
build that FTE cushion.
We could look at, our, we may not be able to offer as many, we got done with Amber's great presentation on high quality learning, but we may not be able to do as many course offerings in some of our high schools because that's a FTE draw in some of them. So, so it's always a give and take a little bit, but yeah, we have to look at that.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Nybar?
I appreciate you addressing that concern. It's a valid one. I think Nancy has a good creative thought there about some sort of match. I will say, I have sat down with some elementary school principals just recently, the last couple of weeks, and I know we've heard this before, but where we've just done a lot of facility improvements and remodels and things like that, there is a growing concern among the elementary school buildings and principals and administrators that a lot of our efforts are in the high school, and they're saying, share the love. And so having just sat down with an elementary school teacher, I do think that what Ms. Tingy said is right. We do have multifaceted creative solutions that we can present with sections and things like that in the high school. We still want to look at that, but I think with the elementary school, when it's just one classroom, and when we have some of these elementary schools that have DLI and we have lower enrollment with DLI, it's really pushing the higher enrollment in our regular classes. And it's just a problem that we really do need to address, because I think it's becoming too difficult for teachers to manage. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Any other comments?
I forgot to say also, thank you so much for the support for Draper Park with the hybrid program. Had to say that.
Okay. Okay, it looks like no more questions, and I feel like you've gotten some direction from the board, so we will look forward to that next meeting. So now we have come to staff comments, and we'll start with the superintendent and then business administrator.
Okay, thank you, President Schill. Real brief, congrats to all of our graduates. Awesome. I had the opportunity to attend all but two this year, so I can't get to all of them, but just tremendous day. And really, as I mentioned in my email, it reminds us of our why. Something happens with these high school kids when they walk across that stage, and I don't know, it's just that maturity and that time you can see that they're making that change to their future and transitioning to all those goals and aspirations they have. So pretty awesome. I also want to give a shout out to Amber and her team. DTL conference summit's been going on the last 2 days. We've had 700 plus teachers. So it's been awesome to see our teachers. I mean, here we are right out of school, and yet they're there dedicated and just working hard to learn and improve their craft. Says a lot about the character and the work ethic of the people in CSD. So really proud to see that. And thank you, Amber.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Mr. Wilcox.
Just again, I said that's last meeting, but another big congratulations to our class of 24. Great to see some 2,500 plus students graduate. That's big for us. And I just want to also acknowledge Terry. Appreciate her efforts filling in for Cindy this week. It's not an easy job, and I appreciate all the help that Terry's given us this week. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll start with board comments, and I just would like to remind the board that we tried to make this meeting short. So let's try to stick to our 3 minutes or less. because otherwise we'll be here for another half hour. So anyway, just a reminder, and we're going to start with Mrs. Nybar.
Well, with that clock, I'm not exactly sure what a half hour is anymore. I want to extend my congratulations to class of 2024 also. Dr. Robbins is totally right. It is the reminder of the why. My favorite event all year. My favorite thing to do when I give the kids the diploma is to ask what's next. I love to hear what their plans are with college and jobs and missions and military, and just to be with those kids, it's pretty awesome. I had the fun opportunity to do something I didn't think I was going to be able to get to, but I was able to go to the lacrosse final. I barely made it. Thank goodness that they had overtimes. So that worked out perfect for me, but that was a pretty electric experience. So exciting, double overtime. And there was a bigger student body crowd than what is normally there. And so that was really cool to see. Great job by our student government kids there that got the kids out to share the love. Super fun to see Corner Canyon baseball as well. That was cool because we were seated 10th, and that was kind of a surprise to everyone where we ended up, but those kids played hard. It's neat to see us celebrate some of those awesome teams that maybe don't always get all the attention and fanfare. I want to just give a big thanks to our teachers and our administrators for such a successful year. I'm super, super proud of our schools and what we're accomplishing with our kids and the administrators. And I feel like the schools I represent, I just couldn't ask to work with or rub shoulders with better people. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Tingy.
Thank you. I too want to express my appreciation to the teachers and the staff and the administrators for a great school year. It just was, for me, it felt like it was the first normal feeling school year in a while. I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I was able to attend many end of year celebrations, whether it's a final concert or an awards night, or a send off for people that are retiring or moving to different schools, things like that. It's just really great in those events to see the community come together and celebrate and recognize excellence and goodness. And also, I mean, graduation is very special to me. I really enjoy attending graduations, and I got to participate at Jordan Valley and the Life Skills Academy and Brighton High School. And this kind of, I guess, shows my age a little bit, but it was my 16th graduation of Brighton High School that I attended between my time on the board and my own children. But I kind of was looking through some memories I had in past graduations, and one of the things one year that really stood out to me was as I shook the graduates' hands, I'd look in their eyes and just say congratulations, and their eyes were just so full of excitement. And so I came home and I just wrote this little line in my on what happened that day, and I just want to share that again because I felt the same thing this year. I saw the future today and shook its youthful hands. I just know that our kids are our future, and I'm so grateful for Canyons District and how well prepared our graduates are for that future.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Tingy. Mr. Edel.
So on the last day of school, my third grader burst into tears after he got home because school was over. He loved his teacher so much. He loved his class. He loved going to school. He loved everything about school. Like, school was his happy place. And that's not by chance. That's because of the educators that we have. And it's a testament to the teachers here in our district. This is one story out of many that happen throughout our district, and I'm really appreciative of the efforts that everyone puts into it. To go along with that, my daughter, who's going into 6th grade at Mount Jordan, never have I seen a child so excited to continue school on another week after school ends. Mount Jordan has a summer bridge program that she's participating in. It's been going for 2 years, and so now I've had 2 children in it. And her friends were so head over heels thrilled to get into it and to be going. And then following the first day, apparently was one of the greatest days. So special thanks to the administration and staff at Mount Jordan for making the transition to middle school a fun and memorable experience, and for hosting that program. And I look forward to a nice summer and another great school year.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Oaks.
Thank you. So I echo what's been said about graduation. Such a great time. All day today and all day tomorrow, I've had the opportunity to attend the BYU Arts Express conference, which is a focus on arts integration learning, particularly for K through 6, but also goes a bit into secondary. I got to see a lot of our teachers there, quite a few of our BTS teachers, but also some of our district people, and also for some of our regular classroom teachers, which I love that. It is a phenomenal conference for anyone who ever has the opportunity to go. You come away feeling the magic of what it's like to be a child learning in a classroom that's really engaging. They share a lot of resources during the 2 days that we're there. And one of them I just would love to read out to you real quick. 10 lessons that the arts teach. And I want you to consider how these things fit within our strategic plan. How to make good judgments about qualitative relationships. Problems can have more than one solution, and questions can have more than one answer. Problems can be solved with changing circumstances and opportunities. How to see and celebrate multiple perspectives. The limits of our language do not define the limits of our cognition. Small differences can have large effects. How to experience the world in different ways. How to express what can't be said. How to think through and within a material. Also, I thought this was interesting. There's data behind this. If the school values art, the student values art. I just want to reiterate, I want to thank my fellow board members for getting behind arts integration and that principle in the classroom. It really is magical. For those of us who were able to attend some of those arts nights that our BTS teachers put together, it's awesome. It's the height of critical thinking and hands-on learning, and you see joy. And when children experience joy and they're learning, they retain it and they're able to synthesize it in different ways. So anyway, it's been a wonderful couple of days, and thank you to the district for sponsoring that as an opportunity to our teachers. I'd love to see our participation in that grow every year. So.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Millerberg.
I echo everything that's been said. The end of this school year was amazing, and I went to many, many events. I just want to spotlight Jordan Valley. Not every student feels like your son, Andrew. And I think it was an extremely honorable celebration at Jordan Valley for students that school has been a life force for them. And I just want to give a shout out to that staff. Amazing. I mean, it's their community. Those kids belong to them in every way. And Stacy and her staff have created an environment there that I just don't think that it can be surpassed anywhere in the world, really. I've seen many special education programs for those extremely jeopardized population in our society. And I just wanted to point that out and say hear to everything that's been said.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Pedersen.
That's the value of being last. You can say hear to everything that's been said. I just want to add a couple really quick things. I want to thank Sandy City for sharing their box at the Real Stadium for the game. They're so accommodating and it's fun to rub shoulders with council members from Sandy City, the mayor, and some of our legislators and their wives, cute kids. It was a great game besides. So thank you, Sandy City, for allowing us to share your box and for giving us the opportunity to honor our teachers out on the field. I just wanted to say once again, congratulations to my grandson who graduated at Jordan High. It was fun to have him come across the stage and to not just shake his hand, but he got to get a hug. So said, it's okay. It's my grandson. So that was fun. And I think it's such an honor to be able to speak and represent all of the educators in that student's life at graduation. You represent the culmination of everybody's hopes, dreams, the parents' hopes and dreams, the teachers' desires, dreams, and frustrations as well. And you get to see the final result. It is such an honor to be there. I just feel so touched that we get to be their last exposure to education. Our handshake is it. So it's an amazing event. I look forward to it. Now I've done it twice. So I'll work on that 14 years thing. And just, well, I've been to some graduations with all my grandkids too, but I don't count those yet. I also want to mention that this weekend on Friday and Saturday is the USBA Legislative Delegate Assembly, and that the members of the board are invited to attend and talk about the upcoming plans we have for the legislators, of what we're going to do for legislation, and to look at the bylaws of our association. And so June 7th, it starts here in the district at Friday at 6 o'clock, and then it continues again Saturday morning. And I get to be Mont now, and I get to say, now I'd like you all to get your Canyons Master Board certification classes done by January 1st. We didn't quite get 100% last year. Let's do it. And we can be put into a really cool drawing, and I can tell you more about that later. But we have, I'm on that committee, and we have made some changes to some of the questions and the format. So I think you're going to find that you really like it. So I'm going to bug you periodically to sit down, spend a half hour, and get that Canyons Master Board certification done. Do it early so that we can be the first one done. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I do want to congratulate the class of 2024, and graduation is also just one of my favorite days of the whole year. It's just so much fun. Then I also want to congratulate Brighton Lacrosse for winning the state championship. I was there, and since I'm on the board of trustees for UHSAA, I was able to give the trophy to them, and it was really cool because the boy who ended up coming and getting it from me is one of Kimball's friends that has just grown up with him, and it was just really cool. Anyway, and I have given the trophy before to Corner Canyon football, but I've never given it to Brighton before. So that was like super special. And his mom was texting me. She's like, I'm so glad you gave it to Mason. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Also just want to say congrats to baseball and also Corner Canyon lacrosse and baseball. That was really awesome. They just did really well. And I had a lot of fun because I got invited to be the judge of a 5th grade lip sync contest at Oakdale. And it was really cute. And I want to tell you guys that the MC was Brian Williams. He's one who interviewed for Mont Spots. And it was hilarious because he had all these different like sparkly jackets and would come and change in between. He'd come in with a new outfit in between each performance. It was very impressive. So it was really cute. So then also I just want to thank Terry and Derek for being here and keeping us on track and helping us. We appreciate you guys. And I will now call the meeting to a close. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what the best answer for that one is. The best one.